have a nice, lively crowd, and we're going to have this. We're going to be making some good tape. Dawn, are we on? Are we ready to go? Or?
We are. You're live.
Terrific. Thank you so much to Don Gosney for recording this so that all of those at home can also enjoy the discussion that we have here. I'm Robert Rogers. I work in County Supervisor John Joya's office, and I've been asked by our respected Richmond Chamber of Commerce to moderate tonight's debate. And it's going to be a wonderful discussion. We are going to have 4 candidates. We're going to go over a series of questions that have been provided by our leadership of Richmond Chamber of Commerce. All of the participants are going to have 1-minute opening statements, 90 seconds to answer each question, and then 1-minute closing statements. So as you can see, this is going to be lively, brief, and as Shakespeare said, brevity is the soul of wit. So we're not going to bore anyone, we're not going to go on and on, but we need to get right to the point right away. So with that, I'm going to ask our candidates to come up here and please get comfortable. Wonderful. So what I will do is I will go, in this case, from left to right. I'm going to call on each candidate, and I'm going to give you 1 minute for your opening statement. After that, you're going to launch into the questions. This is going to be a 1-hour debate. It's going to be very lively. There's going to be no dead air here. Don Gosney, are we still good in terms of our live feed?
We are. Are they going to share a microphone? Back and forth?
That's a great question. Yeah. Is this mic mobile?
It's going back and forth.
Let's go ahead and dismount the mic. Please pass it over to the end. Okay, and so with that, once again, I'm Robert Rogers with County Supervisor Joya's office. I'm happy to moderate the debate this evening. Thank you very much for the Richmond Chamber of Commerce for organizing the debate, the Riggers Loft for hosting our debate, and of course our candidates for participating in our debate, and most importantly, the audience here and at home for watching the debate. Democracy is strong here in Richmond. With that, Mark Wassberg, please, your opening statement.
Well, I'm Mark Wassberg. I was raised in San Pablo. Spent all my working years in Richmond, and now I live in Richmond. Worked as an auto mechanic for several years. I worked as a Chevron, as a pipe fitter and mechanic. Years ago, I got involved with Andre Shoemake and all the other reverends here, stopping violence. Went out and made a documentary, and got into politics. I realized how bad Richmond is, so I think it's time for a change, a big change, matter of fact, on the city council. So my goal is to bring in big business, to train people for jobs. The more people that work, the less crime you have and the less homeless. But we need to build Richmond the way it should be built. You have to have economic growth. If you don't, the city is dead.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Wassberg. And I'll also remind the candidates, our wonderful supporter, Vernon Whitmore here, is going to be keeping time. At 10 seconds to the end of your time, he will raise his hands indicating such. Please wrap it up promptly. With that, our next candidate, please introduce yourself.
Greetings everyone. My name is Jamelia and I'm running for Richmond City Council District 1. Thank you to the Chambers for hosting this great event to support candidates like myself in sharing the vision for Richmond. As a 4th-generation resident in District 1, I aspire to see Richmond become even more thriving than it once was. We know that a flourishing business community is essential to a prosperous city. And so I'm running my campaign on a See a Better Richmond platform that's safety, engagement, and economic resilience. And I know we all want to see a better Richmond in our lifetime, and even afterwards, leaving a place that is still sustainable for generations to come. So as your future councilwoman, one of my top priorities is economic resilience. Richmond bouncing back to propel into greatness. I will be supportive in actions to move forward stalled projects, streamline permitting and licensing processes to eliminate red tape that hinders the growth. we must assess what's working and what isn't.
Thank
So
you
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And again, folks, please keep your eye on Vernon Whitmore. At 10 seconds, he will indicate such. Thank you so much for that opening statement. And next candidate, please.
I'm wondering if you think that your voice matters in Richmond politics. Frankly, in local politics, just around anywhere. My name's Shawn Dunning. I'm running for City Council of Richmond District 6. And I'm coming from a background of 25 plus years in conflict resolution and peace building all over the world. You might wonder why that takes me into local politics. It's really simple. I'm raising my 2 daughters here in Richmond. I love Richmond. We have one of the most diverse, most fascinating cities in the entire country. But we don't have leaders that are listening to all of those voices. And the leaders who are getting things done mean well. I think they care. I'm not going to demonize them. I just don't think there's enough people in the room. And speaking of that, I can't help but call out the fact that tonight, use the word debate, Robert, but I don't know who we're debating again. We can fine-tune some ideas here. But the fact of the matter is, virtually all of our opponents are missing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next statement, please.
Ahmad Anderson, running in District 5. First of all, I want to thank the RCLC PAC for having me here this evening at Riggers, and thank you, Riggers, one of our small businesses here. Ahmad Anderson is Richmond's native son. Born and raised in the city of Richmond. Parents raised me here and went on to be civic leaders in the city of Richmond as city council and mayors Irma L. Anderson and Booker T. Anderson Jr. But Ahmad Anderson has paved the way for himself, paved the way to be the voice of the city of Richmond, and is really looking at the change we need about diversity of leadership. Yes, there's leadership, but there's not the diversity of leadership that listens to the people, does not have a concern about economic development that impacts safety, that impacts neighborhoods, impacts the liveliness and financial responsibility. I want you to come alive in District 5 with Ahmad Anderson, your Richmond City Council person.
Thank you so much, Ahmad. And forgive me, this time on the first round of questions, we will start here on the right and go left. We'll go back and forth as we sequence through these questions. The question is, we want to talk about campaign management. Who is managing your campaign? And please provide an in-depth look at their professional background and what specific skills and experiences make them particularly effective in that role. We have 90 seconds per response, please.
Campaign consultant is Doug Linney, the next generation. Campaign manager is Ahmad Anderson. My experience is that I've been a political consultant for U.S. Senator Alan Cranston, Willie Brown, Ron Dellums, Irma Anderson as well. I've run in several campaigns here in the city of Richmond, for city council, for the BART board as well, and city council twice in 2020. 400 lost in 85, 1,000 or more in 2020, and 70 votes in the regional race for BART. I know the city, I know the people, I am with the people, and that's my experience.
Thank you very much. Shawn Dunning.
I too am managing my own campaign. With that said, however, I have a very talented, get ready for this title, regional ambassador. Wow. And that's Ruthie Abelson, she's right here. The daughter of the late former mayors Howard and Janet Abelson of El Cerrito. If you don't know Ruthie, you need to get to know her because she is literally connected to everyone everywhere. And I'm so excited to have her supporting my campaign because if we're going to make progress in Richmond, we got to get outside of our own little bubbles. We got to realize that the love and the challenges that affect us and happen here don't stop at the borders. And Ruthie's done an amazing job connecting people near and far, including, I recently got the endorsement of California State Treasurer Fiona Ma. So that's what connections do for you, I guess. But more than anything, it's about knowing people, connecting with people, partnering with people. And in terms of my background, I've spent 20 years doing organizational development work as part of my conflict resolution services. I do team development work, and at the end of the day, it's about getting people to work well together, build relationships, build partnerships, And really, more than anything, is just connecting with people. My strategy for winning this campaign has nothing to do with conventional advertising or any of that. It's about meeting people. And I've already covered the entire district almost 3 times on foot. I'm up to about 240 miles. I've delivered 8,000 notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamelia.
Thank you so much. My campaign consultant is Brandon Evans. He has a master's from Cal in urban development. He's fascinating at what he does, very experienced. He also ran my cousin campaign, former Vice Mayor Councilman Dennis Johnson III, who I first reached out to when I decided to run for city council. I saw him at Juneteenth, which I knew he would be at Juneteenth. And I said, hey, Jimenez, I want to run for city council. And he looked at me and he said, are you sure? And I said, yes. And he said, okay. And I thought it slipped his mind, but he gave me a call back a few weeks later and connected me to Brandon. And so since then, there's been, a long drawn out process, but I've learned so much because I don't have this huge team. So I've learned to do a lot on my own, and just resources and skills that I'm able to pass on to the next person who's excited about running for local election. So one day someone will say, Jamelia, I want to run for city council. And I'm going to say, I got you. So thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate.
Well, first of all, I had no plans on running. I met some people out on the street. They asked me if I was going to run. I said no. Got some phone calls. I said no. Then I thought about it. Then I seen some more people. I said, if you help me get on the ballot, I'll run. I'm the campaign manager. I do all the paperwork. So I don't have no big consultant. This was just right out of the blue. So I had to call up Martinez, get all the paperwork, filled out the paperwork, got on the internet. I did everything by myself. And so here I am. I mean, it was, and I was telling people, I said, you sure you want me to run? Yeah, Mark, we like you. We like what you say. We like what you do. We like what you're doing at the city council meetings. And I said, yeah, every time I do, they kick me out. So hopefully I'll be on the city council and I can make some big changes because I know how to fight these people. I know how the RPA works.
Thank you. Now we'll take the next question. We'll start over there with you, Mr. Wassberg. What is the cornerstone of your campaign strategy, especially in terms of community engagement and grassroots outreach and voter mobilization, particularly with underrepresented groups in our community? You have 90 seconds.
Well, in the Iron Triangle, Central Richmond, also known as the Deep Sea, the voter turnout is low, way low. Only about 2% of the people vote in the Iron Triangle. And it's trying to get the word out. You need to go out and vote and make a change. But, I seen the violence. I've been there. I filmed it. I was helping stop the violence. But it's all trying to communicate with these people that you have the constitutional right to vote. And you can make a change. But, you got a bunch of youngsters out there. Actually, the people who's going to be voting is probably between in their 50s and 60s. People around in the younger generation, in their 18, 20, 23, up to 30, up to 40. These people don't vote. There was a report years ago, it was by a friend of mine. He said only 1% of the people vote. So I said, I'm trying to get the word out, going to the city council meetings, telling these people what type of government we have in this
time. Please pass. Thank you very much. If you need me to repeat the question, that's okay.
Please.
Sure. What is the cornerstone of your campaign strategy, especially in terms of community engagement, grassroots outreach, and mobilizing underrepresented voters in our community?
Yes, thank you. So professionally, I'm a juvenile justice clinician, so my theoretic approach is person-centered. So I'm approaching this campaign the same way as being resident-centered. My focal point has been on voter education because I'm realizing in District 1, there's such a low propensity voting threshold, and there's literally about 20,000 residents there. Only about 4,700 participated in the last District 1 election. That's alarming. Engaging voters through our local high schools, having voter education events, pre-voter registration events. So literally in the midst of trying to campaign and emphasize the importance of voting, I've been spending a lot of time scaling back, helping folks get registered who didn't want to register, going into the senior citizen homes, registering folks that are, I have one young lady, she was 68. She told me she hadn't been registered since 18, so to sit there and with her and walk her through the process. I actually registered my 4th grade teacher's son, who's 58. So it's things like that that keeps us going. So thank you.
Next, please.
One of the challenges of getting folks involved is that there's a lot of apathy out there. And unfortunately, it's out there for good reason. Maybe not good, but it makes sense. People have learned, unfortunately, that their voice doesn't really matter. It should, but I've heard again and again and again, what's the point? Nothing ever changes. Doesn't matter who wins, same old stuff. And that's why I'm doing things differently. 2 years ago when I ran for mayor, I knew I was a complete outsider, no name recognition. So I got out there and I started running, literally, like Forrest Gump, on the streets of Richmond. There's 280 miles of pavement in Richmond, and I ran 530. And I met 5,000 people face to face. And I got nearly 8,000 votes, which is unheard of for an outsider with no previous experience in politics. And what that showed me is that people do care when they see the possibility of things being done differently. I just mathematically couldn't reach enough people. But when I would say, look, I'm just trying to get everyone to the table without anyone owning the table. That's the skill set I bring. It's not about my position on this or that. I'll tell you what the position if you want to know it. But I'm bringing a different approach, an approach to make sure that your voice will actually matter. And if you care about something, I'm going to make sure someone's at the table who sees it differently. Because we got to find a way to make it work for everyone in Richmond. And I know we can. That's what my career has shown me, the remarkable people all over the world whom I've seen transform. We can do it here. So my grassroots effort is simply connecting with people and letting them hear that message. And when they do, they support me. Thank you.
End the question.
Yes, absolutely. What's the cornerstone of your campaign strategy, in particular, community engagement, grassroots outreach, and reaching underrepresented voters in our community?
As my campaign states, I'm a voice for you. And being a voice for you requires to be an active listener, meeting people where they are. I spend a lot of time visiting the communities, walking with the community members in those areas to listen to not only what they have to say, but as I tell folks, to be able to say I love Richmond and why I love Richmond is one thing, but the key is to seeing it through their lenses. I have ambassadors in each part of my district, in each one of the neighborhoods. I've walked with them in the morning and at night to experience what they see when the sun comes up and the moon comes up. To be able to understand that and appreciate that, to review the issues with them, go back and do my homework, speak to them, get feedback is important. You need to meet people where they are. You need to step up and listen, and then listen, giving back those feedback. My ambassadors have invited me to homes. As an African American, I've worked with the churches. I've worked with the Youth Service Bureau as a commissioner. I've worked with the child care councils to see what working families are going through. And that includes the BIPOC communities of Black, Latin, Indigenous people, and people of color, and LGBTQIA, the full spectrum of what this city is all about.
Thank you. Now we are going to go into the next question. It's going to start with you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you very much. And now is where we're going to funnel into some specificity. And we're going to really talk about your practical approaches to business issues in this community. Given Richmond's tobacco regulations, including the moratorium on new retailers, how do you view the effects of these regulations on long-standing businesses in the city? And what balance would you seek between public health concerns and the vitality and stability of small retailers in our community? Mr. Anderson.
One, knowing that there's a lot to do with the business, but you have to have businesses that are going to be responsible to the community. We have some of the highest rates of asthmatic. In fact, I'm an asthmatic myself. We have high rates of cancer. People need to recognize that it's not just the emissions, but it's also the exposure, the secondhand smoke. We need to be able to have the conversations and dialogue with businesses about that responsibility. But it requires that you have staff to hold people accountable so that they are meeting compliance measures of what standards and permits they need to have. I think this is a knee-jerk responsibility recently based upon what smoke shops are located here in this area, but to do a sweep of everyone without saying to folks, we've asked you once, we've asked you twice. Now accountability means not only the city to do their due diligence, but in fact for them to go back to the business and say, in order to do business in our town, we're giving you 45 days to 60 days to become compliant. We just saw in the city council about the up and under in Point Richmond, who had not had a permit in 12 years. That's staff's responsibility. That's city manager's responsibility. And as you move forward, you let them know if they don't take care of this, they'll be fined. The next 30 days, they'll be suspended their license. But you need to let them know the responsibility of the children that come there, the tobacco, and the impact on their health.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dunning, same question?
There's a lot of great rules on the books, but if our rules and laws aren't actually enforced, what's the point? You know, in 2018, our progressive city council passed an ordinance outlawing flavored tobacco. I supported that, thought that was great. Why have bubblegum flavored tobacco? There's only one reason, and that's to market to kids. That's a great example of using local legislation to make our community healthier. So great. Flavored tobacco is not allowed in Richmond. But folks, if you go to any one of these smoke shops, who knows which ones are actually permitted or not? Who knows which ones are actually followed any of the process to get there? I don't want to name names because I don't know. But you can find flavored tobacco. I mentioned this the other night, and someone called me afterward and said, hey, Shawn, I was there. I didn't ask him why he was there, but he said, the guy tried to sell me illegal drugs under the table. It's all anecdotal, but it's easy to believe. And so it begs the question, what good are all these rules if we're not practically enforcing them? I consider myself progressive, but I'm a pragmatic progressive. Let's actually get things done. Let's actually see progress. And that means we need to balance the ordinance with the enforcement of the ordinance. And guess what was the first thing to go when our current city council chopped our police budget by another $3 million 3 years ago? The regulatory unit. We have no resources to go out and enforce.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Brown, same question.
Yes, being a fourth generation District 1 resident, literally in District 1, I'm not a runner like Shawn, but I could literally run to maybe 7 different smoke shops in less than 5 minutes. That's a problem, that's an issue. Of course we want businesses, but are all businesses good businesses? And do they align with the direction that we want our city to go in? And if we can't answer those questions, then we should start reconsidering. Also, to the point of the last council meeting, with the opportunity to enforce, to suspend enforcement against the better judgment of our experts that are at the table is blatant disrespect and disregard for our city professionals and our residents. So we have to do better. There's a lot of work to do, but there's also a responsibility on the community that we know what's going on. We have to turn up, we have to turn out, we have to speak against it. I know that when I saw that last smoke shop that I got just overwhelmed with, I went to the neighborhood council and spoke to Oscar Garcia and Ms. Mason, and they said that they were gonna do something about it and escalate it, and that's when that moratorium was placed on the smoke shops. And I'm happy about that, because that's all you see when you go to District 1.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Wassberg.
All businesses have to be legal here in Richmond and anywhere else. You have to go by state code, city code. We had the merchants out there selling their products right on 23rd Street. We all seen it, open pits, working for cash. And finally, the real business owners got fed up with it. I stood with Oscar Garcia. I stood with Rico and tried to get those merchants out off of 23rd Street. And we did. You don't see them there anymore. And the smoke shops, they need to go. All you got is a bunch of thugs hanging around there. Down on 23rd Street, they had a double homicide at that one smoke shop. If I had my way, I would have closed it down. Public nuisance law. You got 3 smoke shops down on McDonald Avenue. You got, I think, about 2 or 3 on 23rd Street. I mean, this is ridiculous. They're just popping up with no license or anything. They just open shop and start selling. If it wasn't for us going in front of the city council to close down those merchants, they would still be operating. Because the city didn't, because it was there almost, I think, for a year. Every day, and all their business kept complaining, and yet it fell on deaf ears. So finally, we went to the city council meeting and said, look, you're going to have to close them down, or lawsuits are going to be filed. So that's the way it is. Because if I had my way, I would close down every smoke shop you got there.
Thank you. This next question will be you first, so please hold the mic, Mr. Wassberg. Thanks so much. The change in Richmond's business tax structure has resulted in significant tax increases locally for business owners. What specific measures would you advocate for to mitigate the financial burden on local businesses and also safeguard our long-term revenue needs as a city? Mr. Wassberg, 90 seconds.
Well, you know the city council does not like big business. This is why they tax in the Hades out of Chevron and all the businesses. Measure U would destroy the business out on Hilltop. The car dealerships had to pay about 17 folds for their business license. This is why they followed the lawsuit. They want them out. And the Chevron deal, that was a blackmail. Ever since 2012, Chevron was out to get, city council was out to get Chevron. Either you give us what we want, or you're not going to get the permits. That's how they work. But like I say, you have to have fair taxes for everybody. You know, like I said, big business could afford to pay taxes. But you don't want to gouge them because no business is going to come into Richmond. They're moving out. Would you pay, if you had a business, would you come to Richmond with high crime and high taxes? So like I say, like the small businesses, you know, the big businesses, you give them a tax break. Small businesses, you tax them fair because everybody has to pay their share. But the city council's not doing that. They said we were going to get all these millions of dollars, but in 2 years they want to close Chevron down. So we're going to get the money from now because Chevron pays 42% of the city budget. I mean, this has got to be the most dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Closing down a business that pays 42%.
Thank you, Mr. Wassberg. Ms. Brown, same question, please.
Yes. Regarding taxes in our city, it's really frustrating to see when the council or when the city is in a financial crunch. It just seems like it's right around the corner that they'll create a new tax. And that's exactly what we've seen more recently. I'm always asked about Measure U, and I always say, like, I'm in the middle because it was very persuasive about increasing 911 calls, more youth services, just better everything. And so, taxing the big businesses, and to see how harmful that was to businesses overall in our local economy, it just begs the question that what are we doing to generate new tax revenue? How are we inviting businesses into our city? How are we making Richmond more attractable where businesses actually want to come? And businesses are not put on alert that, hey, over in Richmond, they're just taxing you whenever they feel good and ready or whenever the whenever the budget is out of balance. So I just want us to get into a space where we are aligning our businesses with our city, cleaning up our city, making it a place where you can sit outside and have a meal without having to smell urine or feces or, walk over anyone. It's very devastating. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Cunningham.
I would repeat a lot of what she just said, so I won't repeat it. I'll say instead, a lot of these issues whether it be Measure U, Measure L, police funding, you name it. We need to get out of the business of false dichotomies. You know, either you're for it or against it. We need to have a little intelligence and look into reasonableness. So, you know, the idea of businesses being assessed a business license fee based on gross receipts rather than a payroll tax, fine, there's nothing inherently unfair or wrong about that. But for it to be reasonable, the percentages, the rates that are assessed need to make sense. And 2 years ago, when this was, being discussed in the campaign back then, I did a little math on the back of the napkin and discovered that it was 30 times cheaper to operate a car dealership in Walnut Creek than in Richmond, California. How does that make sense? It only makes sense if the goal is to drive these businesses out of town. And I find that kind of sad, not because I love car dealerships, but we were getting $3 million a year out of a car dealership that went from getting charged $14,000 for their license to over $1 million overnight. I talked to a lot of really progressive folks around town, and when they hear that fact, they're shocked. So things need to be reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Dunning. Mr. Anderson, please.
When Measure U came about, I was the chair of the Economic Development Commission. In that role, and our responsibility was not only to be able to attract business, but also retain business. We did several exercises around engagement and surveys to figure out what the needs of the business were, what services that they weren't getting, and what services that they could possibly be providing based upon what we were told by the council of the revenue that would be generated. When we asked the city council, have we met our level of what we needed to get from the tax of Measure U, they never responded. There were several times, and there are members here in this audience here who served on the commission with me. It got to the point that we even wrote up a policy to have them address a tiered process on the businesses and how they were being taxed. I stood in this very room and said, based upon that tax, I could literally step over the line and move to El Cerrito, or move to San Pablo, or move to Panola and conduct my business and do better and fare better and still represent the people. There is during the orientation as City Council, you go through the League of Cities. They teach you about financial responsibility. We need better leaders, or those leaders up there need finance for dummies.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Please hold the mic. The next question will begin with you. Now, as many are familiar in this audience, as well as up here on the stage, there is a Richmond Green-Blue New Deal that aims to create 1,000 new green-blue jobs. Are you familiar with the plan specific? To what degree? Do you see renewable energy projects, such as wind turbine production, as realistic and viable for the city's economy? How would you ensure that such initiatives benefit the community equitably? With that, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I believe the Green Blue Deal came into existence around 2000. There's some conversation around 2016-ish or so. It talked about really moving from not just suing Chevron or gaining money from Chevron's back, but moving from emissions and exposure of toxins, then developing an environmental action plan to be able to talk about, what type of clean air programs we work with. Well, we talked about a plan, and recently you see it showed up on the agenda again because nothing's been done. What we do know, those particular clean energy programs that have come in, Moxion, bankrupt. SunPower, gone, facing legal suits. We don't have any other options. The turbines we're talking about are not going to be allowed because the community in my neighboring district here, in Richmond, Caesars District, are going to tell you they don't want to see that over there, out their view. Marina's going to say the same thing. It has not been approved by the Bay Area Coastal Development Commission as well. In addition to that, the Coast Guard cannot protect and keep places in safe harbor if you have those windmills there. It's a bunch of fat air.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Dunning, same question.
Yet again, in principle, the idea of transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to green is brilliant. Let's figure out how to do that. But let's actually figure out how to do that. We don't do it just by saying we're doing it. We need to be practical. We need to be pragmatic. Here's a practical fact for you. Last summer, I met the guy in the Department of Interior, U.S. Department of Interior, who is literally on the committee, partially in charge of determining where offshore wind turbines can go. It's already been set. It's down way in Southern California and way up in Northern California. There is no potential anytime in the near decades, according to this guy from the Department of Interior. I mean, these things take decades to assess. All sorts of studies based on whales and this and that, and currents and ambient wind norms and all this kind of stuff. They're not going to be here. So, what's going to happen is there are offshore wind turbines apparently being installed way offshore up in northern and southern California. And so part of the feeding frenzy here is how do we get involved in being part of that economy? Guess what? Eureka up north has a great port for this kind of stuff. They got lots of open land, lots of room to work on this kind of stuff. You know what's really great to have right here, right where we're all standing, is Riggers Loft. This is a fascinating, fantastic business that I encourage everyone to get to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunning. Ms. Brown.
Yes, I echo everything that was just said, and to also add that we are so fixated on being so progressive, and I feel like we're being so progressive that we're not making informed decisions. We're not considering what the experts' recommendations are, as well as leaving the city behind. We have a lot of things to do and a lot of work to cover in Richmond, and it's sort of like putting the cart before the horse. And I just want us to get back to a place where we can make informed decisions and be conscionable about what we are doing in the direction that we're going in, because everything isn't as progressive as it needs to be.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Wassberg.
This green-blue deal ain't nothing but a scam. That's what it is, a scam. They have some stupid idea that they're going to close down Chevron, all the oil refineries. They're going to get rid of fossil fuel. You do that, the economy's gone. Nobody's going to move. No military's going to move. No police, no nothing. The economy is dead. And you won't be able to go nowhere. You see what I'm saying? They're out to destroy the combustion engine. And once you do, there's going to be millions of people out of work. You'll never be able to get away from fossil fuel. All you have to do is pump it from the ground. We got so much oil now, we don't know what to do with it. But you got these environmental idiots that think they're going to change the world and make everything green and make everything clean, and now they're complaining that Chevron's doing this and Chevron's doing that. There's no medical proof that Chevron caused asthma. There's no medical proof that all this coal dust is causing cancer. It's all just a bunch of pack of lies by these environment wants to change the world. They have some no-brainer that they think they're going to make Richmond green, that there's going to be no pollutants. The bottom line is you cannot destroy fossil fuels. You destroy fossil fuels, you'll destroy the economy, and the world is at a standstill. And I tell you, it'll be an all-out revolution. Because nobody will be able to work.
Thank you, Mr. Wassberg. We're going to switch it up this time and not start over there. We're going to go a little bit more random. And I'm going to give you a two-part question. This one is regarding policing and public safety. Considering the current debate around public safety in Richmond, would you support expanding the police force? Part one. Part two, what would be your criteria for determining the optimal level of staffing to balance community safety with budgetary concerns? Let's start with Mr. Dunn.
Not long ago, I met a resident in front of her house who told me, I used to trust the police around here, but now I don't. And I said, really, tell me what's going on. She said, I used to know my beat officer, but now I don't. And I don't know who to call. I don't know whether I can just trust anyone. That's what community policing is about. It's about having a relationship. The police with you, you with the police. There's a lot of science behind this, and in 2014 or 15, the Obama administration referred to Richmond, California's police department as a progressive model of community policing. Look, America, look at what Richmond's doing. Do that. And then because of what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, which any cop around here I know is disgusted by, because of that, there was an opportunity for some activists to chop away at our police budget. Now here's what I would do is represent the needs of my community. And what I've heard from the community, after polling 5,000 people face to face with open-ended questions. I don't start with, tell me about police. I say, what's important to you? And one of the number one things I hear again and again and again and again is people don't feel safe. Here's the thing, most people feel safer with more police. Here's another thing I'll say. Some people feel safer with fewer police. And until we crack both sides of that nut, we're not actually solving the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Dunning. Yes, please pass to your left, Mr. Edmond.
I'm back. I'll say to you, defunding the police is a non-starter for me. The folks that suffer the most are the black and brown community, where a high crime rate and property crime takes place the most. That was echoed and it was shared with the city council here and shared throughout the country. I believe you can do both. I know that we can do both because I see it in other cities, but you need that kind of leadership inside to make that happen. One thing I have talked about before is looking at where crime hits the most in our northern, central, and southern divisions, being able to put back in place the beat police officers for community policing that we had before. I know it's capable. I know what was done during the crack epidemic when my mother was here, and she was the mayor at the time. I know the relationship of building relationships as they tried to do in Oakland, but they lost the opportunity for funding with Shawn, and we have the opportunity to do that with the relationships we have here. I believe that behavioral health is a concern. I know they just brought on 2 individuals, but is that the correct ratio between the police we have presently and what we need in every area? If something happens in the central and something happens in the north, what happens if something happens in the south? We need to put more money back into both areas and be able to get more data and facts. Other than statistics, crime's gone down. Crime's gone down because folks are not reporting it because no one responds. And if they don't respond, you don't hold that statistic accountable. We need to be able to get back to the community, hear what they say, and apply it accordingly.
Thank you. Now, please pass the mic to Ms. Brown, and I'll remind you the first part of the question is, would you support expanding the police force? And please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like both Mr. Anderson and Mr. Dunning are open to that.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes, I'm definitely open to expanding the police force. I feel that if we have a police chief, we should be consulting with her, asking her what are the needs of the department, not assuming that we don't need more officers because we want to do alternative policing. I live in District 1, so I asked the question, who is the city safe for? I don't feel comfortable with my son standing at the bus stop going to school. However, in another district, a mother might not mind that. So a police presence is a deterrent to crime. So, and I know that growing up in that city, when the police are around, they had their windows rolled down. It was actually community policing. We know the police by name, waving and things of that nature. But now it seems like the police ride by with the windows rolled up and not engaging with the community and things of that nature. So I do believe that there's room for an increased presence of police. Again, consulting the department as to what their needs are, and then being a city that can be able to accommodate that. Because businesses do not want to come to a city where their equipment is being stolen, where they can't, where they're calling the police and the police don't respond. I spoke to a District 1 resident over in the new terrace over there on 23rd, and he said that he called the police about a break-in in his car, and they showed up 2 days later. So.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Please pass to Mr. Wassberg.
I support bringing the police up to full staff because you have that constitutional right. But we need to find out, why was the police defunded? Before the pandemic, during the pandemic, you didn't hear anything about defunding the police. But when the Florida incident happened, the BLM was out there, and And it was our federal government who was defunding the police. They made the police look like the bad guy. Defund the police. Just about every democratic city defund the police because the BLM, Antifa, and all these other radical groups was out there demanding that no cops. They have this dumb idea that they're going to have this task force. That's what caused the defunding of the police. It was the city council that took the sides of these radicals to defund the police. And now they're reaping what they sow. You cannot have a safe neighborhood without police. You have to have more police. Now, your vice president says, well, we don't need the police. We're safer without the police. That's the most dumbest thing I ever heard in my entire life. Because you got all these radicals out there. The police are being attacked. The police are being assassinated. You see what happened in New York City when they jumped on those two cops and beating the two cops up. All they did was get a slap on the wrist and they got out of jail. See, this is what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wassberg. Now, folks, we are coming to our final question, and then we are going to have our final statements. So, thank you very much. We have been very tight, very brief, very sharp. Thank you very much to the candidates. Let's start this one with Mr. Anderson, please. For all candidates, what is your stance on Governor Newsom's approach to addressing the homelessness crisis? Do you support the city's investment in initiatives like Tiny Villages and SOS, especially for the unhoused who are unwilling or unable to enter traditional housing? How would you improve these efforts? Residents are at a wit's end, and businesses as well, with the crisis of the unhoused. Mr. Anderson.
Well, I'm not going to speak for Gavin Newsom and what he speaks on, because I don't speak on what the president speaks on. I speak about what impacts my neighbors, whether you're Democrat, independent or not. What you see in the morning, what you see at night. I do believe that we don't do the proper care that we need to do to not only tally how many unhoused folks there are, but there are unhoused folks who are employed. There are unhoused folks that have skill. There are unhoused folks who don't have skill. And there's unhoused folks who have drug addiction or behavioral health issues. We need to be able to address that to then determine the type of housing they need and the wraparound services. It's not a one-size-fits-all in that way. Also, regionally, it's an issue. If you move folks out from one neighborhood, they'll go to another neighborhood. So you need to work collectively on how to work with one another throughout our Contra Costa West County border. That is seen, that has been the conversations at Pablo, as well as Hercules and Panola. But Richmond has not been a part of that conversation. And then when you give money to programs like SOS, who was given 1.5 in March, program is over, I believe, and they're asking for more money, I want to see the end results of that. I also have to take part of my time to let our candidate down here talk about radicals. I come from a family that worked with Martin Luther King, a family that was civil rights. If I close my eyes, there's no difference between Black Lives Matter and the war to support peace, jobs, and justice. To call folks Black Lives Matter, they matter, as we all matter. So if we're running for city council, you need to recognize Black Lives Matter. And I'm sitting here, right here, see you.
Well, how could there not...
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Please, Mr. Wassberg, please. Mr. Anderson, thank you so much. Let's go to Ms. Brown for this next part. Thank you.
Yes, in 2023, there was a recorded 630 plus unhoused individuals in our city. And we've done a lot of work to address that. I was a part of counseling services for those that were participating in the encampment resolutions, doing counseling services at COVID's twice a week. So again, our city is planning to make the purchase of the Motel 6 Home Key program for supportive services for unhoused population. So there's things in motion and there's things that are happening, but can we do more to address it? Yes, we can. And we have to have aggressive leadership on the council that's willing to push the issue. And I always emphasize 12th and McDonald. There are two super large lots with a parking garage connected that's gated up. And where there could be affordable housing and placement for the unhoused population, they're actually sleeping outside the gates. And that's very concerning. And so how do you drive down to City Hall and pass people laying and sleeping on the streets and you feel comfortable that there's nothing you can do? Yes, there's something you can do. Let's start activating those stalled projects and let's start utilizing those underserved spaces throughout Richmond and throughout District 1.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown, would you please pass the mic to Mr. Dunning for this? Thank you.
It is complex, it's regional, it's state, it's national, it's a tough one. But cities can make a difference. In 2005, the liberal mayor of San Antonio did a State of the City address to the business community, mostly conservative business community of San Antonio. And in that audience was the founding CEO of Valero Energy. Just think big oil, folks. And the mayor said, we've got a problem. We need help and we need to work together. And this CEO, big corporate overlord guy, set up a meeting with the mayor. And he said, are you serious about getting this done? And one thing led to another. The mayor said, you're in charge. It took a business leader to achieve a remarkable transformation in San Antonio. 150 partner organizations collaborating under one roof to serve the unhoused community. San Antonio's homelessness was on par with San Francisco's at the time. It took a few years to build this place called Haven for Hope. But in a few years after that, San Antonio's homelessness dropped 80%, with 92% of the people leaving that facility still healthily housed a year later. Good luck finding 10% success in the Bay Area. Meanwhile, San Francisco in that time frame quadrupled. A city can make a difference, but we need to collaborate to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Dunning. Please pass to Mr. Wassberg.
I don't approve building these little tiny villages. John Joy tried to house these homeless people for 6 months, and they didn't want to do nothing. Finally, he had to call the sheriff to get them out. Most of these homeless people do not want to work. You go to San Francisco, you go to Oakland, you go to Richmond. I see it every day. All they do is sit on the corner and do drugs and alcohol. They don't want to do nothing. That's all they want to do. If somebody needs help, you can get help. I was homeless for 16 years. I lived in my truck for 16 years. I wore the same clothes for a month. No underwear. I took a shower once a month. And now look at me now. Because I knew I had to do something, and I did it. I had help, not much. Digging and eating out of garbage cans. I fell asleep in the Richmond dumpster, collecting recyclables. I know what it is to be homeless. But the majority of people are not going to work. I see it every day in Richmond. Food co, across the street from the food co. Social Security, all they do is just sit there and get drunk. This one guy walks around, yells and screams at everybody. Some of them act crazy so they can draw their disability money. I see it all the time. A person could get help. It all depends. It all boils down to is getting an education, getting a job skill, and figuring out what you want to do in your life. Because most of these people, they're just out for an excuse. They're out to go out and act crazy so they can get their Social Security. And then when they get the money, oh, I'm fine now. And that's why I will support none of this stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Wassberg. We have now come to the time for our 1-minute closing statement from each candidate. Thank you so much, by the way, all candidates, for entertaining all these wonderful questions from the chamber. It's been a very lively discussion. Very much appreciated. Let's start with you, Mr. Wassberg. We'll go in a random order. 1-minute closing statement, please.
Look. Anybody gets on the city council, if you are not an RPA member, you don't stand a chance. You're not going to get no votes. That's just the way, look what happened with Corky and Nat. It was always 2 against 5, 2 against 5. Nat and Corky couldn't do nothing. I get on that city council, I follow lawsuits. That's the only way you're going to beat the city council and the RPA. I've been telling these people, you need to get the RPA out. That's the only way you're going to get things done here in Richmond. As long as the RPA is in office, it's just going to be the same garbage over and over and over again. They want to turn Richmond into a welfare city, but the bottom line is you need to get the RPA out. Because I've been going in front of the city council, and I've been telling you guys, it's just a bunch of anarchists. We need to vote you people out. You need to get on my Facebook. You need to watch my TV show on Channel 26 Comcast every Sunday night at 10:30. I go a complete half hour of everything you want to know about the election, about the violence.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wassberg. Please pass the mic over to Mr. Dunning.
Richmond, California, 115,000 people from all walks of life. We're sitting here in a very historical place where the city went from about 30,000 people to 130,000 people overnight. And that forged a community that's extraordinarily unique. The results of the history of Richmond have put people together that may have never been together before. And what I get excited about when it comes to solving problems is if you want to find a breakthrough solution that's never been found before, you're never going to get it from one way of looking. So if you want lots of different ways of looking at things, what a better place than Richmond, California. That's what excites me. I've spent my life all over the world, 60 countries, 49 states, but I'm raising my girls here. I love Richmond. I love my neighbors. I just want to see us achieve what we're capable of, and I know we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunning. Please pass the mic to Ms. Brown.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight, and for the ones that put on this great event. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We are ticking down. The time has really come very close. We are a little over 30 days to a life-changing election. It is now you've heard, you went over our websites, we've been to forum after forum, and now the obligation is in the hands of the voters. We know that there's monotony on the city council. We know that there's a supermajority that we have to break up. And it is our responsibility to make sure that we show up, that we get registered, and to vote, and so we can see a better Richmond. If we want things to change, my question is to my opponent, if you want 4 more years, what will you do in 4 more years? I've seen what you did for the last 4, so I'm asking that the voters show up and let's get District 1 back on track and the city of Richmond overall.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Anderson, a final word.
I say to you that when the RPA came into play, we saw that they went after Chevron because of the environmental justice. They spoke as if they had listened to the people. They talked about how the status quo needed to go. They talked about how Chevron had an office in the city hall. What I have found recently for folks who haven't taken corporate money, that they just recently got paid by Chevron. What I have found also is those who fought against the status quo have become the status quo. Diversity of leadership is important to energize and motivate the community and let them know that you're heard. Accountability, trust, and integrity is the roadmap. We don't have that lighthouse that keeps people in safe harbor and keeps them focused on the goal. I'm offering that. Many of us here are offering that. That is the way to go, so we are truly the city of pride and purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. And one more time, let's give a good round of applause for these candidates here.
Every Sunday night at 10:30 on Channel 26 Comcast.
Very much appreciated. Thank you, Coach. I want to just take this privilege to say one quick thing to everyone here and at home. Again, I'm Robert Rogers from the County Supervisor's Office, County Supervisor Joya. I want to ask you to do 2 things. This election season, I want you to cast your ballot and vote. And this holiday season, I want you to use your wallet to vote for Richmond and be intentional about patronizing our local businesses and our chamber members. When you spend your dollar here locally, you invest in your roads, your public safeties, your schools, your recreations, your parks, and so much more. Thank you again, and please, one word from Linda Whitmore.
Thank you. I'm listening to the candidates, and they've been saying a lot about voter education, getting voters involved, people who are not registered. So I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and that's what we're doing, trying to get people registered to vote and informed about what's going on. We've had several forums, one with our candidates in person at City Council Chamber on September the 11th. Then we had a virtual forum on September 14th with city councils for El Cerrito, Hercules, and Pinot. And now we have one more forum on October 9th. I don't know if you know, we're going to be voting on a voter initiative on our ballots between ranked choice voting and Richmond Election Reform Act. And if you don't understand the difference between the two, come out on October 9th to Richmond City Council Chamber and hear information about both of them. We're going to have someone there from the Recorder's Office who will be talking about pros and cons about both of them. And then we'll have someone talking about ranked choice voting, and then another person, proponent, talking about the Richmond Election Reform Act. It will also be shown on Channel 28 from 6 to 8, and also a webinar during that same time. So you have 3 ways to find out about this. So when you vote, you know what you're voting on, and not just go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. But you understand which one you should vote for. Okay, so I'm out here, I'm not in front like they are, and I appreciate what you're doing, giving your time and to run for an office, but I'm behind them doing my little bit. Okay, so I have a few flyers, if you'd like to have one, and I'm going to also give it to Ian. Is she here? Okay, to James Lee, your CEO of the Chamber, to pass it out to everybody about the forum on October the 9th. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Linda. Linda, that's not a little bit, that's a lot of it. And Linda, it's really, you do a lot for democracy and voter education. Thank you so much. Thanks again, everyone. Good night.